Welcome to Shakin Hands, where we provide the platform for entrepreneurs and thought leaders to share their stories in order to hopefully influence others to get out of the rat race and chase their own dreams. If you have any recommendations for guests or questions that you want to be asked, please don't hesitate to reach out. Anyways, if you enjoy the podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and share in order to keep the podcast growing. Otherwise, I'm your host, Jack Moran, and this is Shakin Hands. If you're looking for business mentorship, I have a place where you can get feedback on your unique personal development and business growth challenges. Over the last year, I've brought together a group of impact-driven thought leaders where we meet every single day to discuss psychology, communication, mindset, and business case studies. We have people who have made millions of dollars, lost millions of dollars, Harvard MBAs, and new entrepreneurs like you and I. Entrepreneurship can be lonely, so if you're looking for a support system, please follow the link in the description below for some more information.
The company here is called Tidewater. So Tidewater is a private club that's going to be downtown. It's actually just right down the road from here by the Bridge to Nowhere. So right next to where the Magnolia Landing project's going in. They just announced, so there's like this huge $2 billion development that's going in right next door. But what Tidewater is we're trying to kind of reimagine what the country club experience is and trend it towards a more energetic crowd. You were talking earlier about something that just kind of feels more authentic. I think when my wife and I moved here, we looked at, you're trying to meet people, and a lot of people have moved here over the last 10 years. And when you're trying to meet people, you're trying to find out, okay, where's our place? Where's our people? We went and looked at some of the different country clubs, all these different clubs around town. And we didn't really feel like it felt authentic for us, right? It was like, okay, we went to Daniel Island, and nothing wrong with Daniel Island. It's a great country club, but it kind of felt like I was hanging out with my dad's friends when we were there. So maybe I wasn't just quite ready for that. Maybe I will be someday, but I'm not there yet. Some of the stuff downtown felt a little more, maybe a little stuffy, a little old. So not we were looking for something maybe a little more contemporary, a little more energetic, a little more fun. Mm-hmm. We have 2 young kids, and it's, I have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old. So we're in the thick of it in terms of being parents, but that doesn't mean that we're calling it in and not looking to do, not to socialize, meet new people, build community, have fun, do things like that. Right. So, that's kind of where the impetus for this club came from, is we're thinking about, okay, there just isn't really a place for us. And as we started talking to a lot of people that are our peers, other couples, young families, kind of people that are somewhere between the country club crowd and, 22 years old and blacking out on King Street. There's some middle ground there, that we thought, is kind of underserved in the market. And when we heard that Soho House was no longer coming to Charleston, we were like, well, that's kind of that gap, right? So what could that look like? So we started kind of exploring that idea a little bit, and we did some customer discovery. We sent out a survey to 50 different people that we thought were kind of in our target market, and said, if you could have a club, what would it be? How would it feel? What kind of amenities would it have? Those kinds of things. And after we got some feedback on that, that's how we kind of came up with Tidewater.
What do they come back with?
Yeah, there's some interesting things. So one of the things that has been pervasive in terms of events is that people are really looking for a healthy, active lifestyle, right? So there's this whole thing about just, if you think about the traditional country club experience, it has golf, it has tennis, but they're not really you don't think of that as being high performance athletes, right? It's
right.
So if you're looking at people coming from the other end of the spectrum that maybe have been athletes, or, have grown up with going to the gym, and, that whole, my wife drinks smoothies, and, she's very into yoga and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people that are in my peer group, at least, that, are interested in living, I hate to say, it's so cliche to say living your best life, right? But they're optimizing their health, they're optimizing their experiences, they're optimizing all the things that they want to do in their life, and they're being intentional about that, right? And so, that was one of the things that kind of stuck out was, there's a, I mean, we have a bar, for example, but we also have pickleball courts. We also have indoor golf simulators, and we want to like. I think what we kind of glean from that is that the pickleball courts and the golf simulators there, and also we have cold plunge, sauna, some of these wellness components. That's really about like an experience where you're going to meet other people, and that it's about leagues and it's about tournaments. It's not about like going in there like I was part of another golf simulator club in town, and you go in there, nobody talks to each other. People put their headphones in and they just go in and they just like pound balls, and it's like it's awkward at times. Like there's a lot of times there's no music on, there's no atmosphere, there's no thought that's been put into this being an experience. It's just that this is like some place that you can go, and it's basically a indoor driving range, right?
Right.
And I think the driving range experience has already been reimagined. You've got Topgolf right up the road, right? So if you're thinking about this like an entrepreneur, you're going, yeah, they kind of like hit on something there, but they're still missing it just a little bit, right? Which is that the people are looking for this healthy active lifestyle, but they also want the community aspect. And if you don't have the community, then that's why people start looking at joining a country club or joining Carolina Yacht Club or the Harbor Club. There's all these clubs around town where people are just, trying to meet other people, right? And that trend's only accelerating because of all the remote work that people are doing.
Is this similar to other businesses you've done, or is this like something completely different for you?
The only thing, well, so yes, in a way, it's like sort of like an amalgamation of all the different things that I've done, and in other ways, it's like something completely, new. I was watching this video. I think it was, I'm trying to remember. It was like a songwriter, and they were talking about how do you be creative? Like, what is creativity? And really, if you're thinking about like songs or music and stuff like that, it's just taking things that already exist and mixing them in a way that's sort of new and unique, right? Like nobody's inventing a note,
Right.
right? The notes already exist. Chords are already there. You're just kind of like taking certain pieces and going, oh, wow, well, if I blended this in this certain
You're
way.
making new connections.
Exactly, right? So you see this with fusion, cuisine. You see this with all different kinds of things that people, sort of deem as like being creative, or like interior design, like right, this background, right? We've got different textures here that make it look interesting. Well, I don't know if you would have put some of these things together a few years ago, but now this is trendy because textures are all in, right?
Right.
So it's blending those things in a way that's unique, that people see it in kind of a different light. So in one sense, it's like I started a youth sports business. That was my first kind of adult business, so to speak. And we ran tournaments, we ran leagues, we did a lot of events and stuff like that. So there's definitely an element of that experience that comes with for this project. We want to do 150 events a year at Tidewater. So this is very much a programming experience for people to be able to, you can join a league during the week, you can do tournaments on the weekends, but we also want to do things like bourbon tastings and, chef driven dinners and big parties and masquerade balls and fun, kind of fun stuff like that. So I think a part of it comes from that business. I also own a bar in Atlanta, which completely different, type of experience. I would say that I'm, behind the scenes, not behind the bar there, but kind of help to drive the engine that financially drives that business. And so we very much took a lot of the lessons from building that bar to the bar that we're building upstairs at Tidewater. So the clubhouse is part inside, part outside, and that experience of like wanting to be at a bar in a more like kind of a more upscale, but in a kind of cabana style, where you can be outside, you can enjoy the outdoors, this is all goes back to this kind of like lifestyle that you're trying to achieve. And so we're kind of taking that bar, we're taking the club aspect, we're taking this sort of events piece, and we're mixing those things together. So, yeah.
You said your first business was a youth sports business. How old were you when you started that?
I was 23.
Okay, so you went directly into the entrepreneurial path.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be a business owner. I started my first business when I was, I guess 10 or 11 years old. It was called Rollerblades. And it was basically we would ride on our rollerblades and go to people's lawns. We'd push our lawnmowers and we'd like cut their grass. So
And rollerblades?
that was like the guess. I mean, we'd switch to shoes.
Oh,
when I got
okay, I was gonna say.
But yeah, it was like in our neighborhood, and I just had a couple of lawns that we managed in the neighborhood. I went to Kinko's back then, which is where you would like go make copies, and we came up with this little thing, and it was like, yeah, roller blades, like a little play on word of cutting your grass, and yeah, that's how I bought my first car. So it was like a little bit of a
Wow.
it was a great experience of like learning how to do that, and then like getting a few lawns and learning how to manage that and being dependable and all those kinds of things. But yeah, once I went to college, studied that in entrepreneurship and business school, and was just trying to learn how to think about, like, how do you think about those problems? Like, I mean, I don't think that I really even knew what entrepreneurship was. I think I'm still learning, about what it actually is and what the process is. But I've always been very curious about learning about lots of different things, and that's kind of why I think I was attracted to it.
Yeah, what do you think? This is like a big debate right now. What do you think about college? Do you think it's like valuable for someone that's wants to be an entrepreneur to go to college or no?
Mm, interesting. Yeah. So I think another business that I was involved in was elevator business, and so after the youth sports business, I got
You got a broad spectrum here.
yes, yeah. I always joke like the bars, the elevators. It's like I help people to get up to get down. So they are sort of linked, and actually my role has kind of been the same in all those jobs, which is trying to figure out how to build the business. Right, it's all the stuff that you don't see. That's the engine that drives it to grow.
So you're more operational?
So I've done every job, right? I can confidently say that if there's been a job in a business, I've done it. When you start as a one man show, or you're having to kind of wear different hats at the beginning when the business is growing. I've done operations, I've done sales, I've done the finances, all of those things. So I'm kind of like, because it's in all these different industries, I'm sort of industry agnostic in that I'm like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing like
Yeah.
that. And so what I always try to do is find smarter people at certain things to come in and help me to do that. And we've certainly done that at Tidewater. But I don't think I answered your question, which is, do I think college is valuable? So if you were to tell me, you know, there's sort of like this American compact about like you go to college, you study hard, and that it kind of guarantees you this certain kind of life. And I think to a certain extent, people are seeing that that's not entirely true, right? So I think that's what you're speaking to.
Mhm.
I think you have to really think about what it is that you want to be, So it's not a binary. I don't think it's a binary answer. It's if you're the type of person that, is really interested in technology and, is a little more cerebral, maybe. I think college could be a good path for you. If you're a type of person that likes to work with your hands and you like to build stuff and you like to get outside and create things that way, that's maybe not the best way for you. I've seen a lot of guys that came up in the elevator trade that, they're making six figures, they have no debt, they're making, all the money in the world, and they love what they do. So I've seen how that's been, I think a lot of the trades are becoming more appealing right now because we have so few people, going into those trades. And so as a result, the pay for a lot of those jobs has gone up pretty significantly. So, yeah, I think it just depends on who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, a lot of people I think the problem is, number 1, at least in my own experience, like, in high school, there wasn't, like, a great system of understanding your interests,
Mhm.
right? And understanding, like, which path to take. I remember, like, determining what I wanted to do based on, like they were like, "Oh, dentists make good money," or like,
Mhm.
software programming, that's gonna be a huge career where you're make a lot of money,
Mhm.
and, like, looking back, if I had gone to college for computer programming, I would have been miserable. It's not aligned with my personality
Mhm.
whatsoever, my skill set. I would have been a failure at that. My attention, my ability to focus on a computer, like, is, not good, and so to pursue a career in that wouldn't have been a good choice for me. I would have wasted a lot of money, and I think that's the problem with college right now is you're going in as an 18-year-old, like, you're a kid, and you're picking like, you're taking on, maybe $200,000 of debt,
Mhm.
to go down this path that you're not even sure if you're gonna pursue.
Yeah.
So I think, like, if you understand exactly what you wanna do, college is, like, a great resource where you can learn a ton and you can, like, take in all these, you can get, like, niche education on whatever it is that you want to do, but it's making that choice first before, like, jumping into I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, no, I mean, anything that I learned in business school, you can download off Harvard Business Review and do those cases and read and learn a lot of that stuff. That's not really what the value of college is. I think a lot of people very much misinterpret that a college degree equals money, and that's not what a college degree was ever intended or designed for. College is about learning how to learn. which is a very important skill, but doesn't necessarily translate to money, right? Like there's a lot of things where you can learn how to learn. Like when it's like, I was watching this documentary about Arnold Schwarzenegger, very fascinating about, how he became, this power lifter and Mr. Universe, and then he becomes this movie actor, right? The biggest star in Hollywood, and then he becomes the governor, right? And they were asking him like, how did you become all these things? And he said, I just very clearly pictured myself, as this thing. Like I could see it very clearly in the future. And then he's just like, I just worked really hard towards that. But I think what's interesting about it also is that once he realized that he could transform his body, then he realized, well, he could transform his ability to act, or he could learn how to transform his ability to be a businessman, or he could learn how to transform his ability to be a politician. Like those are all learnable skills, right? And that's what the value of a good education is that those foundational elements. It's not necessarily what you're studying at all. It's that you learn that you can learn.
Yeah, I've realized right now, like, I hear this repetitive theme where people are having major difficulty, like, understanding their path or direction. Like, how did you define that path for yourself and, like, no, like, this is, like, the lifestyle that I wanna pursue and then stay congruent with that path? And, like, what advice would you give to people that are trying to define that path for themselves?
Yeah. Wow, that's a really deep question. I mean, you got to get to your why, and if you have a dream that, again, it goes back to how do you see yourself? Who are you? Right. And those are questions. You got to kind of try on some different masks before you find out, what they really are. And I certainly I've had tons of failures where I've kind of, you try something out for a little bit and you go, nope, that's not it right there. Um, the when I'm thinking about, it's interesting. So I turned 40 this year. So that's a big milestone. It's a big number. It's kind of a scary number. Um, and I was kind of like feeling a little anxious about it at first, right? Because when I was turning 30, I also kind of, it was a similar thing where, and I think you kind of do these like every decade, right? Like when
Right.
you're 18, like you're saying, you have no idea what you want to do. You're approaching that 20. It's like, oh wow, I'm almost an adult here, right? Or I'm some version of that. And so you're going, okay, what I'm supposed to have this all figured out. And then at 30, I was like, wow, I don't have this figured out yet. And then at 40, I'm like, okay, I still really, I don't still quite have it figured out. And then I think you start to like maybe just get comfortable with that idea that like you're going to have like a couple more versions of you. And that, like, here's a good example. So my grandfather worked at essentially one company his whole career. My dad had like two careers. I've already had five careers, and I'll probably have more, and I think that's just the pace that the world is changing now. Even though my career has changed, what I've found is that there's certain things about myself that I now know to be true. And so I only do the things that I know that I'm good at. And I focus on the things that I like doing, because I can do the other things, but as soon as I can pass those off to somebody else that likes doing those other things, that's the best thing for the business. It's the best thing for me personally. We use this software called the Predictive Index. Culture Index is a similar one, but it's sort of like the Myers Briggs, but it's more helpful in a job scenario, and it helps to kind of, it's like shorthand for helping people to understand what kind of person or what type of work they like to do,
Yeah.
if that makes
What's it
sense.
called?
It's called the Predictive Index.
I love Myers-Briggs, so I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so I would say, I think there's some data. It's something like, 70% of the Myers-Briggs information is accurate. You're gonna go, "Hey, this is kind of a good picture." This is more like 90%. And the reason why it is more effective is because in Myers-Briggs, you have to pick an answer. In this one, it's a free word association. So there's all these words that you can pick, and you go, "These are the words that are me." You can pick 0 words, or you can pick
Wow, that's
all the
really
words.
interesting.
So it really changes in terms of, because like sometimes in Myers-Briggs, you're like, none of these are really the right answer, right? But you have to pick something.
Right.
So that's part of the reason why it works better. And it's something that I do with anybody that I'm going to go into business with now. It's something that I do with anybody we're going to hire. It's something I like to do even with like vendors, or like,
Really?
I
Wow.
send it to our architect and our interior designer, because I wanted to understand how they think. And there's different kinds of people. So you have people that are visionaries, right? Those are people that think at the macro level. So it's like they can see the big picture. Now you try to put that person into the weeds, they're not gonna be that happy, right? But then there's people on the other end of the spectrum, right? They're very good with the details. They cross the T's and they dot the I's. And like a simple example of that is like most entrepreneurs If you were to ask them to draw if you had a bunch of crayons on a picture that you're going to color in, right? An entrepreneur might pick up the green and color a little bit, put it back down, grab a red, draw a little bit, pick up a blue, whatever. Whereas somebody that's more detail oriented, more precise, they're going to finish all the red spots and they're going to be very careful. They're going to take their time and they're going to fill in all the red. And then when they're done with that, they'll put that down. And if somebody was like, hey, I need you to do the blue thing right now, they're like, no, 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 I'm still working on the red thing.
They're more concrete, sequential.
100%. So they work in a linear fashion. Whereas you're almost like ADD when you're an entrepreneur. Like I will work on 10 or 20 different things and then I'll circle back around. I'm just kind of like pushing everything a little bit at a time. So if you don't know that about yourself, which one you are, that really impacts what kind of career you should go into. If you're linear and precise, you should be an accountant. You should be a lawyer. You should be something where you're going to do deep work. You're going to focus. Somebody's trying to distract you. No, no, no. I need to finish this. I need to do it correctly and I need to do it perfect. Right. Whereas, with an entrepreneur, it's the opposite. I need to fail as fast as possible. I want to have, all right, that doesn't work. Boom, switch, change, go to the next thing. Right. And so those are the kinds of insights you can get from doing something like that. So there's sort of this visionary thing. There's this idea of being more detail oriented. Then there's this other concept, which is like more of a glue person. So we always, you talk about on sports teams, there's glue guys, like all these guys, he's such a good
Camaraderie
teammate, right?
guy.
Yeah. He's the rah-rah guy. Everybody loves him. And he might have sort of like, he's the rebounding guy. He plays good defense, it's stuff like that. You need glue people too. So there's the engine that pushes the ship, right? There's the gas. Somebody's like pushing. And then there's somebody that's kind of checking on everybody. That's a glue person. Hey, are you okay? Is everybody good? Has everybody talked to the customers? Is everybody happy? Kumbaya, like all that good stuff. And then you need other people that are going, hey, did we bring enough water? Are there any holes in the boat? Did anybody, call ahead to make sure there's a reservation? So people are like, hey, let's slow down a little bit, right? But in order for your team to really be, strong, you need to have all three of those elements. And if you are able to get that onto a team, that's when you see magic happen, right? That's when the sum of the parts starts to become greater.
That's super interesting. I've realized there's where I've struggled is going from strategy to operations. And there's sometimes like tension between those two positions.
100% there should be.
How do you smooth out and keep everyone going in one direction and not have conflict between strategy and operations?
So operations should be breaks. There should be break people. They should be telling when you have a vision, okay, if you're the strategy guy and you're flying here at 30,000 feet, they should be every day the bane of your existence because they're going, that won't work because of this. That won't work because of this. And you might get frustrated with them.
Yeah, it
right?
sucks.
Because you're like, oh, why are they being like this? You might even take it personally, which is even worse.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now you go from now you have relational conflict as opposed to task conflict, which are two different kinds of things. Like task conflict is when you're like, hey, what's the best way to go, drive downtown? Should we take a meeting or should we take this road or take that road? Well, that's could be subjective. You might argue about it a little bit, but ultimately when you have task conflict, you find the best way, right? I say what I think, you say what you think, and then we go, okay, this is the best one, right?
Yep.
That's different than relationship conflict, where if you are going, this person does not trust me to figure out to get us downtown. Now we've got a whole different, sort of situation, right? So task conflict is good. When you have your gas person and your brake person button heads, that's what's supposed to happen. That's why you need that glue person to make sure that they're okay. They kind of act as that buffer a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
And they also then might interact with your clients, because if these two are yelling at each other, once they figure out what they want to do, then that glue person can go back to your customer and go, hey guys, this is what's going to happen. And they're like, great, thank you.
Yeah.
They don't need to know about all the, how the sausage gets made.
So how do you avoid the relationship conflict?
That is,
Or what causes relationship conflict?
Man, I mean,
Is it ego?
That can be a big one. Yeah. Well, and also not identifying what's happening. Right. So there's a whole, if you want to talk about ego, this idea that it's my idea. If you say something is my idea, then it's about you, right? It's not your idea. I was talking about this earlier when we were thinking about creativity. Like, someone's thought of this before. If you're seeing something and you repeat it to somebody and they say, wow, yeah, that's cool. And then somebody else has independently thought of that on their own. What you're doing is you're tapping into truth. You're not coming up with something new. Like, it is what it is, right? Like, it is nice to be on a beach. Just because you observed that it's nice to be out on the beach doesn't mean that it was your idea to go to the beach, right? Many people have thought about this before. So that is an ego thing. And ego, if you're especially at the entrepreneur phase, people go, "Oh, I had this great idea." It's like, who cares, man? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You know, if you're thinking about like an equity stack and how to split up you know, who should get of the founders, how should we split it up? How much should we give to investors? How much are we going to give to employees? All that stuff. Ideas worth about that much,
Yeah.
right? Because it's only the execution of those ideas that actually bring and creates value.
Is there a methodology for doing an equity split?
I had a chat a while back about this. I don't know that this isn't something I learned at business school. This is more just like from my experience. But really, in like every single deal, you have three different kinds of elements that you might give value to, right? So if you think about it like a triangle, so going back to this kind of staying in this idea is you have money, right? So if people put money in, that's great. You're going to need money. You might not need it now. Maybe you need it later, but people put in money, you can quantify that. And money is really just a representation of their time. Okay. So in order for them to give you that money, they had to give their time somewhere else where they were then compensated by with money, right? Like
Right.
money is time. Like there's that expression, like time is money,
Yeah.
but it literally is. That's how we store time, which is a kind of a crazy way to think about it.
Yeah.
But someone, instead of giving their time, can give money, right? And they can get a percentage of the pie for that. The other way you can do it is by giving your time, right? So maybe you don't have any money to give. That's what you typically would talk about that, like it's like for the founder equity, or it's like sweat equity,
Mhm.
which in a couple of businesses I've been involved in, that's how I was able to get in there. It's like, I'm young, I got all the time in the world, man. I'll work late, work long, figure it out. Like I'll figure it out. That's the sweat equity piece. So there's your time, there's the money that you're going to put in, and then the other piece is expertise, right? So a lot of times with expertise, you're going to buy it, right? You're going to go find the best person. If you were starting an elevator company, you'd go find an elevator mechanic that really knew what they were doing, and you're going to buy his time. But what you're really buying is his expertise, right? Now, if he gives his time, now maybe he's getting some sweat equity. But
Right.
if he wants a salary, now we're paying for that expertise, or maybe it's some sort of combination. So we can't really afford you. You're the best researcher in the world, and we want to develop a new drug. Well, we can't pay you that much cash, right? But we can give you some equity for how we're compensating your time. So it comes down to time if you think about it. And then what is the value of your time? Is it just the cash, in which case you're not really involved, it's passive? Is it your expertise, in which case, that really kind of comes depending on the stage that you're at. It could be marketing expertise, could be legal expertise. But all that stuff, all that expertise, those are things you can buy, right? But what do you need for that? You need money, right?
Yeah.
And time.
So I see like a lot of people that like want to participate in the game of entrepreneurship, um, and they don't have money. First of all, they're
Don't need
young.
it.
They're young. They don't have a lot of capital to participate in a deal, but they've become like anchored by their bills and by, all these things that limit the amount of opportunities they can participate in. How do you kind of get out of that cycle? And obviously you haven't really been in that cycle because you jumped right into, entrepreneurship. And likewise with me, I tried to always keep my expenses pretty low so that I was able to pivot. But that's a big struggle that I see a lot of people having right now is like, they get into this system immediately where they, make a paycheck off their first job or whatever. Then they immediately get rent and they get, 12-month lease. So then they're 8 months out before they can stop paying this $3,000 bill per month. Like, do you have any insight on how to like get out of that kind of rat race and into,
Get two jobs, man. I mean, I when I was learning the elevator business, I took a job working for Kone Elevator. It's the biggest elevator company in the world, or close to it. There's four big ones, but um, I wanted to see how the machine worked, and they paid me to teach me how things work. And how really what I learned is how dysfunctional they are. I was shocked to find out that a company that had 10,000 employees was operating on a system of SAP that was from 1995. They were brutal in terms of internal operations. And everybody that worked there had never really seen any other business because kind of what they did was groom their own and promote from within. So they had no idea how far they were lagging behind from a tech perspective. I just as a simple crazy example, I sold a repair of an elevator. Okay, so my job was to go, an elevator would break, and we'd kind of, with a mechanic, we'd assess what needed to be fixed, right? In order to get that to happen internally, I had to go on Microsoft Word and I had to type out this whole thing, right? Then I would print that off 3 times. I'd put one to the service supervisor, the guy that would organize mechanics, and I put it on this big pile on his desk. And he had huge piles, right? And they would just sit like a literal file on his desk. Then I had to put one in my file, and then I had to go to this filing cabinet in the office and put it there for records. And I was like, who checks on these records over here? And they're like, we don't know. No, don't ask those questions. Just make sure you give one to Gary, put it in that filing cabinet, and you put one over here. And I was like, okay, so how do the mechanics know that they need to go repair this elevator now? Well, Gary will get to it. And I was just so blown away because I said I just turned 40 this year, but I'm an elder millennial. So I remember the world before, smartphones and all that stuff, but I also grew up with the internet. So for me, it was like shocking that they could not have technology to just make this happen more quickly.
Right.
It was kind of crazy. So going back to your question though, which was if you're trying to learn a business, go take a job. It wasn't the best job I ever had, but I had a company car. I got a salary. I had health insurance, and, I had to work, I reasonably could do that job in 35 hours a week, which left plenty of time for me to do other things, start working on other things. And I ultimately was planning my escape, as soon as I got in, because I was like, wow, it's going to be pretty easy to beat these guys. Like you think, wow, this is this big, huge company. They're going to squash me because I've got this great idea. They can't, they're like an oil tanker. They can't even turn 5 degrees. They're just on the path that they're on, and they're, just chugging along, and they don't even see you. They can't even imagine that things could be done differently.
Yeah, it's very apparent to see like your unlimited mindset where like, presenting that problem of having, the expenses tying you down, you instantly have that solution to get a second job. And I see that problem a lot, that limited mindset where people are like, I can't enter this opportunity because of X, Y, and Z reasons. But it's finding that, that why or the one reason um, to be able to pursue that.
Well, going back to the predictive index, I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to be visionaries. You need to be able to imagine this very distant point in the future and then work your way backwards to it. And if you're not able to do that, you're probably not an entrepreneur. You might be better off. Maybe you want to get in the entrepreneur space, but think about what your skills are, because you don't have to be the CEO of the company. You could be the COO, and you're the best person at going, instead of thinking a million feet in the distance, you're going to go, okay, what's the best way to do this 10-step process? And I'm going to work on doing things faster and more efficient. And you have a real knack for that. Like I give you an example, like somebody that does Sudoku, that's probably more of an operations person. That bores me to death. But there's people that love it. I see them do it all the time. My grandmother used to do that. And you know what? She was an engineer.
Yeah.
She went to Purdue, that was the way that her mind works. She's like, here's this puzzle. So if you're that type of person and you want to get into entrepreneurship, go find a visionary who's going to be all disorganized. They're going to frustrate you, every day. And you're going to frustrate them too, because you're going to tell them all the reasons why it's not going to work, but you need each other.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was the synopsis of your, it's called personality index or predictive
index.
Predictive index. Yeah.
Mhm.
What was your,
So my profile is called the captain. I've been captain on a lot of the teams that I've been on. What the captain is good at, so it's kind of like rating you on a spectrum of 4 things. They're not good or bad, but it's the first one's independence versus how collaborative you are. So I'm very independent. I can jump out into the boat and we're just going to start going, and I'll figure out where we're going to go. I may not even know yet, but I'll figure it out. Another one is how sociable you are. So some people are more reserved. Other people are more, energized by being around other people. I'm more energized by being around other people. This is fun, like for me. Whereas if you were, again, maybe more of an engineering type, this might kind of drain your battery a little bit.
right.
You might need to go be kind of quiet after this. Whereas for me, I'm going to be excited today. Another one is pace of work. So I'm super driving. I want to go fast. Other people are steady. If you're working on a nuclear reactor, you probably want somebody that's a little steadier. I'm probably not the best person for that, right? So, and then the last one is how flexible your thinking is versus how precise you are. And so I have very flexible thinking. I'm driving. I'm sociable. and I'm extremely independent. Those are a good profile for entrepreneurs.
They're pretty similar to the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah. I
A
mean,
lot of
well, this is so again, no, the Myers-Briggs and predictive index didn't invent this. This wasn't their idea. They tapped into some truth.
right,
Right? What they're describing is something that's just true.
right,
You innately understand what I'm talking about because you've experienced this with people. Right? This
yeah,
is just how people are. And if you look at like, it probably has to do with like evolutionary biology, but like, we used to be in like groups of like 160 people. And out of those group, we needed different kinds of people. We needed a blacksmith, but we also needed a chief, and we also needed, all these different kinds of things. So I think people just genetically have probably evolved into this way where like you just kind of have these dispositions. And having two boys, it's and nephews and stuff like that, and coaching a lot of kids, like I used to think it was like more nurture versus nature, but boy, I think it's a lot of nature. You can't really change who people are innately. Like you can kind of work on the corners, soften some of the edges a little bit, but like if you're the type of person that wants to like go out on a boat and sail the wild, sail the ocean, that you can't just put that into somebody. Like there's people that are just built that way. And
right.
there's other people that like to do Sudoku. And it's not good or bad. It's just that you need to figure out who you are. And once you start to have that information, then you start to view the world very differently. You start to view other people differently. And that was when I got involved in the elevator business, that's when I learned about this concept of it was called the culture index, which is kind of the same thing. But there was somebody that I was working with, and in my mind, she was working against me. I thought we were like in competition with each other, but in reality, she was just kind of helping to. Well, she was basically cleaning up the wake of destruction behind me, right? Because I was just like a torpedo going through the ocean, but then there were all these little details that needed to make sure that they were getting, cleaned up. And once I realized that, I was like, oh wow, this person's like they're trying to help me. But if you don't see that, that's when you get into relational conflict.
So as the captain, what are the strengths of that personality type and what are the weaknesses of that personality type?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do is I leave people behind. So once we say, hey guys, we're jumping in the boat, we're sailing off into the distance. I sometimes get so focused on that and I'm going so fast that I start to leave the group behind. When, one of the drawbacks to that is you're called the absentee manager. So one of the things I've had to learn is that I'm really not a very good manager, because if I teach you something once and you demonstrate to me that you can do it, I believe that you've got it and I'm going to move on.
Right.
Okay. Whereas a more glue type person is going to come back and check second time, third time, to the point to where you're like, hey man, I got this. Right. But, so it depends on the situation. It's not that it's good or bad. It's that it depends on the application of those behaviors. And it's not that I can't be the other way. I can be doting and slow down if I need to, but that's not my natural disposition. So if I can just go and go and go and go, I'm just going to keep going until the people tell me to pull back.
So what systems and habits have you had to put in place to kind of counterbalance like your weaknesses
Yeah.
within your personality type?
So many. I use my calendar. I have set so many alarms throughout the day because I get so engrossed in this conversation that I'll forget about all these other things I have to do today. I have like hyper focus as opposed to some people that like are all over the place. Like once I'm zeroed in, I'm the whole world like
Disappears.
yeah. So I have to set alarms. My calendar controls my entire life. Everything with my wife, with my family. I got a lot of different things going on. I use that as a tool. The other thing I use is this software called Asana, which is a project management software. I use that for Tidewater. I've used that for other businesses. If you have like a consistent process that you're having to do, even like thinking about our family financial plan, like kind of plotting out what does that look like? Here's the goals that we have. How are we going to get there? Like creating milestones and working backwards for that. That's a way for me to write down those things and organize those thoughts in my head, because otherwise it's kind of like, sometimes I wake up at 3:00 in the morning and I'm thinking about 10 different things. I have to go down to my office and I'm just like, I have to like get this out of me because it's been going on in the background, and I have this idea about, we need to do this, we need to do that. And I have to get it out onto paper. And so I use those tools to kind of organize those thoughts. And then now I can share that with other people. So that helps other people to not get left behind because they can see what the roadmap looks like.
What about like managing energy levels like throughout the day and like keeping your, what maybe it's working out or good diet or like, how do you manage those to make sure that or what habits do you instill to make sure that you're performing every single day and you're consistent?
Yeah, so my wife has been actually really helpful with this piece. She's sort of just a natural yogi type person. But yeah, I mean, my diet, I've definitely been working on that in terms of just eating more whole foods, trying to stay out of things with boxes, staying on the perimeter of the grocery store. And it's not 100%, but that helps. We're going to bed earlier. Obviously, that's part of also just having young kids and stuff like that. And then I do try to work out pretty regularly and continue to play sports. I play in a pickup lacrosse game every Sunday. Chase around a bunch of guys that are half my age and still enjoy doing that. So yeah, I think you got to do those things that make you feel excited and cause you joy, and then also keep the motor going.
Right.
But I don't know, like it's funny, like you would think that I would have, I definitely don't have that figured out. I mean, if I've, it's like, yeah, this is 40. What is 40 supposed to look like? And then you'd think that you would know. You have all this experience, all these things, and yet here you are still, stuck in some old ways of thinking, some old paradigms where like you're doing stuff that made sense 20 years ago, but maybe doesn't make sense anymore. So there's a lot of things that I'm trying to do to grow and grow as a person, grow as a leader. But it's hard.
Yeah. You've been obviously on this journey for a long time now. Like, how are you operating differently now than when you first started out as an entrepreneur? Like, what things do you do differently now that you think are imperative to success?
Well, I'll give you the simplest example is when we started the first business. I don't think I had a shirt on, so we were just like 23-year-old. We were trying to figure out how to make a website. I didn't know how to make a website.
Yeah.
That's I mean, it's like that seems like I mean, it was a lifetime ago. So there's no comparison really to thinking like so this is the sixth business I've been involved with starting, and I've been a first employee. I've been in the sweat equity role. Um, I've been an investor. I've done it all by myself. I've done it with partners. Um, so this time it's a lot more organized, right? Like there's a method to the madness. You know what you need to do. First thing we did this time is instead of building something is we went out and did customer discovery, right? So we need to go out and talk to 50 people. We need to get their input. What do you want? And, turns out that smoking cigars wasn't that big of a deal. Now, I didn't necessarily think that it was, right? But we had probably 25 amenities. What are things that you like to do? It was a very clear curve, right? People love the sauna and cold plunge thing. I don't do that, but apparently that's a big thing now. So we put one in. People are into pickleball. And what was interesting about that is that pickleball for women, much more likely to play pickleball than golf. That was an interesting learning. So, it's like now instead of building something and then hoping people will buy it, we just ask people what they want to buy, and then we build that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've been trying to do this with I've been doing some like siphoning some money off, or my distributions that come off my core business into doing some real estate development in Latin America. And my business partner and one of my mentors kind of taught me that strategy, which is like, branding a destination. Like he buys old cattle farms, oceanfront properties, and then develops them into, communities.
Cool.
But instead of like defining that community, it's like finding that audience or like picking that audience and then doing the same thing that you're talking about, like, kind of surveying them. And the most recent community he did is a place called Playa Nomada. And he sold it to, jujitsu coaches and then, built this community and branded this community to jujitsu coaches. And so it was easier to perpetuate that community when you have this like, brand that's defined off your audience instead of like him saying, okay, I'm going to make this, about whatever, and then trying to find that audience.
I'm really into XYZ, so I'm going to build this. Other people are going to be into this too, as
Right.
opposed to going the other way around. Who are the people that are super passionate about triathlons, right, or whatever it is, right? Jujitsu, their interests, like those communities already exist. So then go find a community that's not being served, and then do something for them that they want.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's just like an, different way to go about it, but it's like Not typically, I think, how people would initially think to go about things, but
So there's, if anybody out there that is thinking about going into entrepreneurship, the first thing you should do is you should buy the Lean Startup. There's a great book from Harvard professor, and it basically lays out what the process is to start a business. One of the concepts that it talks about is creating a minimum viable product. So what's like the smallest thing you could do to test if people want this? I was watching a interview this morning, and the guy was talking about this girl who was in her dorm, or she was in college, and she had this idea that she wanted to do like a clothes sharing peer-to-peer thing where you could do this. And so the guy goes, well, what's the simplest way we could test if this is true? And he goes, right. Do you want to borrow my clothes on a piece of paper and just knock and then tape that on the outside of your door? So simple. That costs no money. Right? It was such a good example. I think it was one of the guys that started Netflix that was getting interviewed there. And he was just talking about how simple is that, right? Like, does your idea actually have traction? Well, how could you find out? What's the simplest thing we can do? You have clothes in your closet that cost you nothing, right? Just see if anybody on your dorm, all these girls want to borrow your clothes. And I don't know what the answer to it was, but that's going to inform your next step.
how do you qualify an opportunity? Like, what kind of filters are you going through, or what aspects does an opportunity have to have for you to think it's worth pursuing as a business?
Mm. Yeah, that's really changed a lot. I mean, so I think the first thing is like, there's an intuitive component to this, right? Which is like, are we tapping into truth here? Is there something that feels like I don't know how to explain that. That's intuition. It's your collection of experiences, whatever that is. You can sense it when you're onto something. The universe, like, things just start happening. It's like, oh, we're going in the right direction. And the exact opposite is true when you're not onto something. You'll start getting resistance. Perfect example. There was this software we were looking at to manage the club, and I had some reservations about it a little bit. And then we talked to one investor, and they said, "Yeah, no, we ripped that out of a club." And then I had a demo call with them, and there was these little hairs are like sticking up on the back of my neck. I'm like, "There's something wrong." I'm like, "But we need this software. We need to get this complete so we can go to the next step." And it was like the universe was like telling you like, no, 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 no. And then we got a little bit deeper into it, and they had claimed that they were a cloud software. They were not a cloud software. They were built on Citrix, which is something from the 90s, which is called remote access, right? So it used to be like you'd have a server somewhere and you could connect into the server from a remote location. That's not what the cloud is. Okay. But the salesperson was like, oh yeah, no, it's all in the cloud. And I was like, all right, well, how is it going to integrate with our accounting software? And they're like, oh no, it doesn't. I'm like, well, then it's not in the cloud because that's what that is. And so it's like, you know,
Got to trust your intuition.
yeah. So I think there's a piece of it that's intuition. The other piece of it is like, do you have passion for this? Do you have the skills for it? Are you excited about this? Is this a place where like you think you could play? And that's having to take a hard look at yourself. I don't. You'll notice none of mine involve tech, right? That's like the sexy, cool thing to do is like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to code. That's not who I am. I'm not going to be the best coder. I'm not interested in doing that. So that's not the right place for me to play. I'm playing in more in the, SMB world, where it's, under 2 million, if I could get a business to $2 million in EBITDA, or that's a great win for me. That's the place where going from 0 to 2 million, that's where I think I have the best chance to play. Other people have better skills that are going to be from 2 million to 50 million. Or maybe your skills are going to be, you want to go work for some big corporate company, but you got to really understand, do I have skills here, right? Is there something unique that I have or that I like doing, something about me that's going to allow me to compete in this arena? And I think, for example, with Tidewater, I am the core demographic. I mean, this is fun because I know what I want. And now I'm going out to, a lot of people in my network and go, well, what do you guys want? That's a unique resource that I have, that I'm able to talk to people that are, our potential customers. I think that was true with the youth sports business as well, right? I was the product actually in that business, coaching lacrosse. So I think you got to look at passion, you got to look at your skills, you got to have that intuition, and then at the end of the day, it's like a lot of it is like just the macro stuff you can't control. So there's no reason why golf simulators would need to be a thing. They are. It's really happening right now with Tiger Woods Golf League, and the technology is really improved, and it's like the confluence of all these things that I can't control. I'm not making projectors that are higher definition, but those exist now. Um, AI is helping the golf courses to look more realistic. I don't need to invent AI, but the experience of doing indoor golf now is better because of the way that it looks. Um, I didn't invent the Tiger Woods Golf League, but that's happening. And now what we're going to do at Tidewater is our Tidewater team's going to play, our golf team is going to play against other golf uh, teams because we have this TrackMan software where
That's cool.
we can play anybody in the world. We can play in all these leagues, and it's all about this competition now, which is so different than going out on a golf course with a couple of buddies or maybe some people you don't know and spending the whole day with just, 3 other people. Now we're
Right.
talking about, um, now we're talking about having 24 people in a room, and we're all able to watch each other's shots, and it starts to get a little fun in there. You start getting a little chippy maybe. Maybe you're talking a little smack, "Hey, we're down by 1. We gotta make this shot." "Oh, you make the big shot." Everybody's, "Oh,"
Yeah.
like that's the community piece that I think we've tapped into is like, that's what we're trying to create, is getting people excited about wanting to get together with other people. 'Cause that's not changing.
So I noticed you didn't even mention money at all. Why is it important to pursue or gauge or filter an opportunity with values more than finances?
Well, because money is a symptom of tapping into truth. Yeah, when you tap into truth, other people will recognize that, and when you are sincere and you are like, when you're solving a real problem for somebody else, like, as an example, if you're a dad and you have a couple of young kids, you might feel a little isolated, and that's not something that a lot of guys would wanna talk about, but it's definitely a real problem. You go from spending all this time with your friends, you're in college, you're having a good time, you're surrounded by people all the time. And then now maybe you have a remote job. Now maybe you have, a wife who works, so you're helping out at home. Now maybe, you have moved to a new place. And so you don't have these easy ways to just meet other guys or make new friends or just have this sort of normal human interaction. So people are starved for that's why co-working spaces are popular. And this Tidewater is a place where you could bring a laptop. We have phone booths where you could take a Zoom call. It's not your office, but like you could go there and hang out. You can go there and do a little work, do some emails, take a phone call, have a meeting, that kind of thing. But it's just a place for people to connect. And if you're creating that kind of connection for people, they're happy to pay you for it. What the price is going to be is, you gotta do a little discovery there, but the price is determined based on how big the problem is. So
Right.
the better the problem you can solve and the better you are at solving that problem, the more people are going to be willing to pay for it. So that is a symptom. That is the result of digging deep into value and trying to speak truth to people.
What motivates you outside of financial gain?
Well, it's not that financial gain doesn't, motivate me. Of course it does, right? And I think I've had some different levels of success and those different experiences. I would say that for me, I have always wanted to live my life on my own terms. I wanted to reclaim my time, and I'm now in a position where I get to decide what I do with my time. And I don't like have a dream of making like so much money that I don't have to work. That isn't really very interesting to me. I'm more interested in being in a position where I can work on things that I want to work and I can work as much as I want to. I've been um, I've been in the grind. I have a boss. I know what that life is like, and I just wanted to be able to live my life on my own terms, and that has always been more important to me than, um, you know, just actual dollars. But that's what the dollars represent, right? You gotta get to a certain point where it's like you're I mean, if you can get to a point where your unearned income is greater than your need, you now have reclaimed your time. That's the goal for me.
And this is my final question, what would you say is the number one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you embarked on your entrepreneurial journey?
Wow.
It could be more than one thing.
Yeah, the number one thing that I've learned, I guess it's all about the people that you're gonna work with, the relationships, I'm very happy. So, Andy Batkins, Elliot Calhoun are my co-founders in this project. Um, we get along great. I was friends with Andy before, we started this project and, I think we'll be friends afterwards. in Elliot has become a great friend as well. Um, when you get the right people in the room, it's the right balance of those characteristics I was describing. It's just magic. Like, it's just lightning in a bottle. You can't explain it in any other way. And I've been in I've had no partners, I've had 2 partners, I've had 4 partners, it's not necessarily about the amount of people, it's about getting the right people involved, and when that happens, man, your life is just so much more exciting. I mean, the perfect example is marrying my wife. Like, the amount that I have exponentially improved as a person because she's now in the room with me, like, that is how you grow, right? And it's like, when you're younger, your friends kinda keep you in check, like, if you get a little too high-minded, you think, you're really great or something, your real friends, they'll cut you down a little bit, right? And that's a good thing because 'cause they're helping to shape you, right? They're helping you to have realistic, understanding of who you are as a person. And so, yeah, I'm working on becoming one of the good pieces of advice I got when I was, like, looking for a wife was, try to become the person you're looking for is looking for. And I think that's great if you're out there, if you're a single guy and you're trying to figure out how to, meet the right girl, is you should try to become the person you're looking for is looking for.
Unpack that a little bit. One more time. Become the person who you're looking. One more time.
Become the person who you're looking for is looking for.
Looking for is looking. Okay.
Okay? So right now, there's some amazing person out there for you, and she's going, "Well, I have this person that I'm imagining,"
Gotcha. I get
right?
you.
So become that.
Yeah.
Okay, become that. And you can become just like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he became the Governator, just like he became Mr. Universe, just became like he became all these things. You can do that too. And I think maybe what I'm as just even as I'm sitting here right now, what I'm realizing is you can do this in business as well. Because I'm not the businessman that I was when I was 22, trying to figure out how to make a website. Right. I've grown and I've evolved. And I think also the people that I'm working with now have done the same. So look for people that have that growth mindset, that have that kind of pioneer mindset, that are like always growing. They're always pushing to the next place. They're always looking to, try to improve what they're doing. And that's how you're ultimately going to unlock this value. Because if you get the right people in the room and you start really digging into real value and you speak and you connect to that truth, your business it's going to work.
And I think like just defining that outcome or being intentional about that outcome, or like, when you talk about like who you want to be, like just going through that practice of like, like when you said, being the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. Um, just like going through that methodology or that practice of like defining who that person is like a big step towards becoming that person. And same with like, I was going to ask, like, how do you find like good people that you're aligned with? Again, like just going through that practice and being conscious and defining who is that person that I want to be partners with gets you that much closer to finding that person.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's, for me, that's been something that's been super difficult for me, is like getting good people. And I think when I started being intentional about like the type of values of the people and the personality of the person that I want on my team, like those people started emerging. But it is so important. And it's great advice that you're giving, because like, in my opinion, people are the most volatile part of a deal. Like managing personalities and like managing people and making sure those people align can be the opportunity can be so unbelievable. But if you don't get the right people in that deal, that's what typically like makes the deal fall through. I don't know if you agree with that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yep.
If people are interested in, what you're doing, like, the club that you're starting, and or, might just want to ask you for some advice, or want to chat with you, where can they find you?
They can hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Ryan Lee Covert is my LinkedIn thing at the end. But also if you're interested in Tidewater, it's tidewaterchs.com. We have a contact us page, and there's a place where you can apply to. If you were to go on there, that'll get you invited to upcoming events that we're doing. So we probably will be open December, January-ish. We're under construction right now. But what we're doing is every month we have events that people can come out to and kind of get a sense of like who the membership's going to be. So we already have 65 people signed up to join the club. We have another 200 people that have expressed some interest. And so we've got great momentum on that. And what we're trying to do is have those people come out and have them invite their friends, have them invite other people that are in their community to connect. And so like this month we have at Over the Horizon, we're doing a women's yoga event. So it's International Women's Month. So we wanted to connect on that piece. So we're doing this yoga event with some healthy snacks and smoothies and that. And then next month we're doing a chef-driven experience with Chef Anthony Marini from The Pass. He's doing a dinner event for our founding members to kind of get everybody together and just sort of experience some of these chef-driven experiences that we want to have at the club. These ideas of like these curated dinners, 5-course meals, wine pairings, but also like you're there with people maybe you don't know and doing that on purpose. As a way to connect with other folks. And then we're going to do some parties. We're going to have we'll have all different kinds of events coming up. So if you're interested in doing any of those things, you want to join this community, that's kind of the way to get, to meet people, to see if this is a good fit, because I think kind of like what you were saying before about how do you find good people, it's as much about them picking you as it is about you picking them. And I think that's the same way we're approaching our membership, is like, you're going to know if this is something that appeals to you, if it solves a problem for you or not. And if it doesn't, that's okay, right? We're looking for people that want to have this pioneer mindset, that want to have this growth, that maybe have had some success, but still want to grow. And that doesn't necessarily mean monetarily. I mean, just as a person, as a community, to meet more friends, to live this better life, to try to level up, And if people have that mindset, I think they're going to find a good home at this club.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. It's a great idea, and I think you're like a great case study of how like having passion and that energy definitely translates, because it's inspiring. Like I can feel your passion when you talk about it, and because of that, it's engaging and makes me interested. So I appreciate you coming on. It was
Yeah, man,
awesome.
this is great.
Very
Thanks
insightful.
so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wrap.
All right.